Hello all, welcome back to Time to Dice Character Creation. We're going to make your favorite fictional characters in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Today, we're branching out with none other than Groot, everyone's favorite botanical bruiser. Groot hails from Planet X as a Flora Colossi, a race of towering, sentient trees, where the vocabulary is limited as their combat skills are vast. After spending some time in the intergalactic zoo, because apparently even space has questionable wildlife laws, he was freed by a sympathetic guard and set off for a life as a mercenary, racking up an impressive record of prison breaks. It was during one of these incarcerations that he met his soon-to-be best friend and trigger-happy partner, Rocket Raccoon. The duo busted out together and started bounty hunting, and eventually co-founded the Guardians of the Galaxy, where Groot proudly serves as the team's muscle, moral support, and unofficial houseplant. So beware of spoilers, and without further ado, let's get started. So what do we need to make the Giving Tree? Well, first, we need the basic benefits of being a Flora Colossi. That means photosynthesis, a flexible physique, and the ability to regenerate. Next, we need to become an unkillable monster, being extremely difficult to take down, and if enemies do manage to kill us, we need to make sure there's enough left of us to sprout into the next generation. And finally, we need to be the bruiser of the Guardians, dealing massive damage to anyone who tries to harm our friends. The Goran Ancestry is practically tailor-made for Groot. As a Goran, we get the humanoid and plant traits, 8 starting hit points, medium size, and a natural boost to both strength and constitution, which is perfect for our unkillable tree build. On top of that, Gorans are blessed with low light vision and the unique photosynthesis ability, meaning we don't need to eat. Instead, just soak up the sun. However, if we go more than a week without sunlight, we will start to starve, so no extended dungeon crawling without a UV lamp. Finally, we'll take the strong oak heritage, granting us a +2 bonus to resist being grappled, restrained, or knocked prone, and a +2 bonus on acrobatics checks to balance. We're going with the bounty hunter background to reflect Groot's time tracking down fugitives before teaming up with the Guardians. It's rare to find a background that perfectly matches the character's pre-party career, so when we get a slam dunk like this, we take it. The bounty hunter background gives us another boost to strength and constitution, as well as proficiency in survival and legal lore, so we can both track our targets and know exactly how many intergalactic laws we're about to break in the process. Finally, we get the experience tracker skill feat, which lets us track enemies while moving at full speed, because it's hard to be an effective bounty hunter if your targets are always one step ahead. For our class, while Groot is usually a gentle giant, he's got a serious mean streak when it comes to his friends being in danger. And since we can't pass up the absurd durability of the tankiest class in the game, we're going to go with Barbarian. As a Barbarian, we get 12 plus con hit points per level, making us tougher to bring down than just about anyone else. We also start with Expert in Perception, which is fitting. Trees are great at just standing around taking in their surroundings. For our saving throws, we get Expert in Fortitude and Will, which fits our physical and mental resilience. However, we only get trained in reflex saves because, well, we're a tree. Dodging isn't exactly in our nature. For our skills, all Barbarians get Athletics, which is a must if you're the team's muscle. But we'll also be taking Intimidation to scare off threats, Occultism because we're an alien, and Nature because, well, like I said, tree. Finally, we get trained in all simple and martial weapons, so we can actually wield some of Rocket's arsenal if needed. And we'll get up to medium armor, though we'll probably just rely on our own barky exterior to tank hits. For our attributes, we're putting everything we have into strength, putting it at a +4. Dexterity will be at a +0. We usually tank hits rather than dodge them, but we will invest in this later so we can at least pretend to use a gun. Constitution is at a +3, because we want as many hit points as physically possible. Intelligence is +0. According to the Marvel Wiki, Groot has received the finest education of photonic knowledge of the Arbor Masters, and he has a tremendous grasp of quasi-dimensional superpositional engineering. Of course, this was reported by a guy literally named Maximus the Mad, so I think that's worth a grain of salt. Finally, our Wisdom and Charisma are both at +1. He's not exactly a smooth talker, but Groot is lovable and perceptive, and surprisingly good at knowing who to trust. That brings us to level 1, which is where I would normally tell you to like and subscribe, but instead, I'm going to tell you to take a look at our subscriber count. We've officially reached 1,000 subscribers. Thank you all so much for your continued support. Me and my wife started this channel last year with no idea how to edit a video or what makes for good audio quality. And while we're still far from the most polished YouTube channel, even within the Pathfinder community, our videos are definitely leaps and bounds better than they were last year. And that's thanks to not just your viewership, but also those of you who have left feedback for us on how to improve our quality. We are determined to keep improving, and we hope that you stick with us for that journey. Alright, enough of the heartfelt nonsense. Now let's get back to the video. At level 1, all barbarians must use an instinct. For us, that's the elemental instinct. Specifically, the wood element instinct. Because, well, if I have to explain that we're a tree one more time, I might go into a rage. And speaking of a rage, we get the rage action, which gives us temporary hit points and lets us deal additional damage on all of our melee strikes, at the cost of being unable to use a concentrate action. And the elemental instinct modifies our rage further, increasing our damage bonus and changing it to either piercing or bludgeoning. In addition, whenever we go into a rage, we grow excess cones and foliage to grant protection to our vital areas, giving us concealment for as long as that rage lasts. We also get the quick tempered feature, letting us go into rage as a free action whenever we roll initiative, and we get 2 feats at this level, 1 class feat and 1 ancestry feat. Our class feat will be on Raging Intimidation, which will let us loosen the restrictions on concentrate actions by letting us use our intimidation actions while in a rage, and also giving us both the Intimidating Glare skill feat and the Scared to Death skill feat whenever we meet those feats' prerequisites. As for our Ancestry feat, we'll pick up the Hidden Thorn feat to get a 1d6 piercing unarmed strike, letting us impale enemies with hidden spikes, because sometimes even Groot needs a few pointed arguments. At level 2, we're picking up the Kineticist dedication with the Wood Gate, allowing us to channel elements and make elemental blasts out to a range of 30 feet. Full disclosure, this won't scale up in damage as we level up, but for now, it's a great way to punish enemies who think they can escape the wrath of Groot, whether they are in melee or at a range. We're also grabbing the Hefty Hauler skill feat to let us carry the Guardians. This increases our bulk limit, which means we can haul more gear, more loot, and most importantly, let Rocket ride us into battle like a sentient war steed. Remember when I said that we wanted as many hit points as possible? Well, at level 3, we're making good on that promise with the Toughness feat, which grants us extra hit points equal to our level and reduces the DC of all recovery checks by 1. We also get the Furious Footfall feature, increasing our movement speed by 5 feet or 10 feet while raging. Now, I wouldn't necessarily call Groot the quickest member of the Guardians, but he's the tallest Guardian, so he's got the longest stride. So this technically fits. We're taking a deeper dive into our Elemental Gate at level 4 with the Through the Gate Archetype feat, which lets us pick up the Hardwood Armor class feat from Kineticist's feat list. This gives us the ability to grow our own wooden armor and shield, boosting our AC and allowing us to reduce incoming damage with the shield block reaction. Because why wear armor when you can just become it? We're also picking up the Titan Wrestler skill feat, which lets us grapple, shove, and trip creatures larger than ourselves by growing our hands to an appropriate size. We're upgrading our natural weaponry with the Murderous Thorns Ancestry feat at level 5, which gives our Hidden Thorn unarmed strike the Deadly D6 trait, meaning our critical hits hit even harder. But that's not all. Our Brutality feature also kicks in at this level, increasing our strike proficiencies to Expert and letting us apply a critical specialization effect of any melee strike we make while raging. That means when we critically hit with that Hidden Thorn strike, not only do we deal extra damage from the Deadly D6 trait, but our target also starts taking 1d6 persistent bleed damage on each of its turns. Alright, so we've got our defenses locked in, and our offenses hitting like a falling oak tree. What's next? Well, protecting our friends, of course. At level 6, we pick up the Timber Sentinel feat, which lets us cast the Protector Tree spell, a spell that reduces damage taken by adjacent allies, so if anyone tries to hurt our team, they'll have to go through us first. And to make sure enemies think twice before even trying, we're also grabbing the Intimidating Prowess skill feat, boosting our ability to frighten foes using our immense strength score rather than charisma, because nothing says, maybe I should rethink my life choices, like an angry, hulking Flora Colossi glaring you down. At level 7, we're picking up the Quick Climb skill feat, because, well, let's be honest, we basically are the climbing rope, with our ability to stretch and extend our limbs. We also gain the Juggernaut feature, boosting our Fortitude proficiency to Master, and upgrading all successful Fortitude saves to critical successes. In other words, poison, disease, and anything else that tries to weaken us, not happening. And to hit even harder, we'll pick up both Weapon Specialization and our Elemental Instinct Specialization, increasing our damage across the board, whether we're raging or not. So whether we're throwing hands, thorns, or tree trunks, we are definitely hitting like a forest full of wrecking balls. At level 8, we get the ability to punish foes who are foolish enough to get grabbed by us with the Thrash class feat. This forces our foes to make a Fortitude save or take damage equal to our Strength modifier plus our Weapon Specialization damage plus our extra rage damage. The best part, since this is a fortitude save and not an attack roll, it bypasses the multiple attack penalty and keeps the pain train rolling without a mischance. And if you were just thinking to yourself, that's terrifying, good, because we're also picking up the terrifying resistance skill feat, boosting our saving throws against any creature we've demoralized within the last 24 hours. So not only do we scare them into making mistakes, but their fear literally makes us harder to hurt. At level 9, we take the Grow Tool Ancestry feat, allowing us to shape our body into whatever tool we need. Whether it's a shovel, a bridge, or an impromptu crowbar, we always have the right tool for the job. We also get Raging Resistance, granting us resistance against all creatures and effects with the wood trait. It may not come up often, but at least now we can confidently say that Groot is the strongest plant in the galaxy. Finally, at this level, we get Reflex Expertise, boosting our reflex saves to Expert, making us a little bit better at dodging, though, let's be real, with our dexterity, we'll probably end up just tanking hits anyway. At level 10, we make grappling foes even more efficient, with a Tangle of Battle class feat. This lets us attempt a check to grapple any creature we critically hit as a reaction, freeing up that extra action for Thrash for even more damage. While it's limited to critical hits, and it doesn't ignore multiple attack penalty, don't worry, we'll be getting something in a couple of levels to make grabbing our foes even more reliable. For now though, we'll pick up Slippery Prey, which lets us mold our body into a shape that's easier to escape from grapples. This feat reduces, and eventually eliminates, the multiple attack penalty we take while trying to escape. At level 11, we pick up the Robust Health feat to stimulate Groot's healing factor, increasing the healing we receive from any treat wounds or battle medicine action that an ally tries to help us. So, not only are we a tank, but we also regenerate like the best of them, just as long as our allies take a little bit of time to stimulate that growth. We're also grabbing Mighty Rage, which boosts our class AC to Expert, and doubles our rage damage on our first strike of combat. So when we go into a rage, the first hit is going to hit like an entire forest falling down, and you better believe foes are going to hear it. At level 12, we get Furious Grab, allowing us to automatically grab a foe after hitting them with a strike, no roll needed. So if you thought it was bad enough getting hit by Groot, well now you're locked down for even more punishment. And we grab the Quick Coercion skill feat, because honestly, it doesn't take that long to say, I am Groot. At level 13, we gain Violent Vines, allowing us to cast the Murderous Vine spell once per hour. While this spell has a concentrate trait and can't be used while raging, the lack of need to sustain the spell means it's the perfect spell for grappling a foe to get them out of combat while you go into a rage and take care of their friends. Who says Groot can't multitask? We also pick up Weapon Mastery, increasing our strike proficiency to Master, and Medium Armor Expertise, which boosts our armor proficiency to Expert. And, to top it off, we get Greater Juggernaut, making our Fortitude saves legendary, and upgrading all critical failures and Fortitude saves to regular failures, as well as halving all damage we take from failed Fortitude saves. All in all, it's going to take more than a bottle of Weed Killer to take us down. At level 14, we pick up the Towering Transformation feat, which is probably designed for the Giant Instinct Barbarian, but it doesn't technically have them listed as a prerequisite, so we're going to take it. This feat lets us use a reaction whenever we grow in size to force all creatures within 30 feet to make a will save, or be frightened. While we don't have any way to grow in size on our own just yet, if we do pick one up, this feat will be perfect. We also grab Lasting Coercion, meaning that when we say, I am Groot, they'll listen, and they'll stay frightened for longer. At level 15, we take Die Hard, letting us cling to life even longer by increasing our dying threshold to dying 5 rather than dying 4, as well as greater weapon specialization, further increasing the damage of all of our strikes, making our already devastating attacks even devastatinger. And finally, Indomitable Will increases our will saves to Master and upgrades all successful will saves to critical successes, ensuring that no mind tricks or fear effects will shake our resolve. At level 16, we pick up the Collateral Thrash feat, which lets us smack the foe that we're thrashing into another enemy. Now, when you thrash, you can choose an adjacent enemy to your grab target, and they also take your thrash damage, with a basic reflex save against your class DC. It's a great way to damage multiple enemies at once, and make a real mess of the battlefield. The Guardians often find themselves facing a lot of enemies, and now they're all in danger. We also pick up Lead Climber, letting us form our body into a ladder, making it easier for other creatures to follow us. Groot's got everyone's back, even when they need a little help getting to his level. At level 17, we pick up Unfettered Growth, which lets us benefit from the Enlarge spell. When we take this feat, we can choose to become large twice per day or huge once per day, Which option you choose comes down to personal choice, as both fit the character pretty nicely. But if you're paying attention, you'll notice that this feat works perfectly with the towering transformation feat that we took a couple levels back. We'll also get perception mastery, which, honestly, it's kind of a hard feature to explain. You're going to have to just read this one for yourself. And finally, we'll pick up revitalizing rage, which lets us regain temporary hit points after just one full round of cooldown instead of having to wait an entire minute. Groot's got a lot of health to manage, but now we can recover faster and stand the fight longer. At level 18, we'll pick up the brutal critical class feat, which significantly enhances our critical hits. Not only does it increase their damage, but it also amps up the persistent damage that we deal on a critical hit. We also pick up combat climber, which lets us keep our hands free while climbing vertical surfaces, allowing us to grab foes and use impulses, even while climbing. At level 19, we'll pick up the numb to death feat, with making Groot even harder to take down. With this, the first time we drop to 0 hit points each day and come back up, we regain extra hit points equal to our level, and don't increase our wounded value. This means Groot can come back from the brink of death and keep fighting, and we don't even have to revert to a baby version of ourselves. We also gain armor mastery, boosting our armor proficiency to master, giving us even more durability, and then there's the Devastator feature, which lets Groot's roots burrow deep, ignoring 10 points of a target's physical resistance with every strike. And finally, at level 20, we truly become an unstoppable juggernaut, increasing our resistance to all damage and boosting our raging resistance to 8 plus our constitution modifier. At this point, Groot is nearly impossible to take down, and if you do somehow manage to chip away at him, he'll just keep coming back like an ancient tree weathering a storm. And with our final skill feat, Terrified Retreat, any foe we critically succeed on the demoralized check against is so shaken that they're forced to flee for a round. Alright, now that we've reached level 20, let's take a look at the pros and cons of this build. For our pros, the biggest and most obvious one is that we're nearly impossible to kill. With a high constitution, the toughness feat, and several ways to get temporary hit points, Groot just keeps coming back. Which, honestly, wouldn't be that bad if it wasn't for our second pro. We're devastating in melee combat. With Furious Grab, Thrash, and our incredible rage bonus to damage, we're nearly certain to win any damage race. And finally, it's not just combat where we shine. We also have a good amount of utility and versatility, with feats like Grow Tool and Lead Climber to help us help others. We truly are a great fit for almost any team. For our cons though, we have limited range options. While the Wood Elemental Blast from Kineticist helps, it doesn't scale well, meaning Groot struggles against flying enemies or ranged foes. Next, we're not winning any awards in the Dexterity department, and while Reflex Expertise helps, Fireballs are still not our friends, and not for the obvious reason. And finally, Rage is great for turning us into an unkillable monster, but it also limits some of our more versatile abilities, like using Violent Vines or Unfettered Growth for their spell effects. All in all, this build is a nearly unkillable bruiser who grabs, smashes, and protects its allies. While it's not the most flexible in skill challenges or ranged combat, our durability, raw power, and crowd control makes us an absolute menace in melee. If you want a build that shrugs off damage, wrecks foes up close, and says a lot with just 3 words, this is the way to go. If you liked this video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I didn't say it at the beginning of this video, so I'm definitely going to say it now. But I'm also going to say, once again, thank you guys so much for 1,000 subscribers. Our YouTube journey has already come so far, and we still have such a long ways to go. So, until next time, keep rolling high, and we'll catch you in the next one.